Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. This is the last EVE Talk before the expansion into the Abyss, and I think I should talk a little bit about the expansion itself because I've been reading a lot of questions in the comments about the filaments, especially where do you get the filaments. So at first it was thought that Concord would sell them because they grabbed the first Triglavian ship and they basically reverse engineered a lot of the technology, including normally the filaments. But it looks like they will actually be found in data sites across the game. So I can't tell you if they'll even be found in data sites in HiSec or if you'll have to go into Dangerous Space for that. We really don't know too much of those details. It'll be a little bit of a treasure hunt at first, but I fully expect that basically all data sites will potentially have tier 1 filaments added to their loot tables. Next to that, I've been doing some preparations and basically I got some implant sets. I'm skilling up for a final extra jump clone that I will then use into the Abyss so that I don't need the implants, or I should say so that I don't risk the implants. Which are they? Let's go over here, implants, the attribute enhancers. So I'm quickly going to jump into at first at least a jump clone that doesn't have attribute enhancers, get him into the Abyss before I actually start risking stuff there. So we'll see how all of that works out. My go-to ship is going to be the Sacrilege. I still think that the double webs are super important. Got a nice armor tank, and I think very importantly as well, with that ship you can switch out to the different damage types depending on the encounter. So that should be good. That is going to be my first ship on TQ for into the Abyss. And next to that, so we've got the implants, we've got the clone, I've got the ship. Well, there is one more thing that I do need to do, that is to get a ship ready for data sites and just, you know, start running them, grabbing some filaments, and hopefully we'll be able to get into the Abyss very quickly. Now, I don't think that we'll see too much of an impact for the expansion on the economy itself, because it's mostly a side economy. Tech 1, Tech 2, minerals, none of that really gets impacted by Into the Abyss. But of course, at first it's going to be quite interesting to see what kind of prices people will be able to ask for instance, the Triglavian ships, the Triglavian skills, the weapons, but also the abyssal dead space changed items and things like that. What kind of potential will be found there. So we're in for some pretty interesting times. I just don't think that we'll see a major impact on EVE Talk right away. So let's get started on that. I guess that's why we are all here for the market. As always, we're going to start with some plex and stuff, and that's going to be at 3 minutes 15. Like that. So let's start with plex, and you can probably tell from the ticker already that plex are back up a little bit. So we had a nice little bottom, 2,850,000 ISK. Now it's finally over. I basically think we had lots of sales here from CCP. So 2 times we see a clear bottom forming around the 2.85 million mark, and those were, I think, buy opportunities. We are already back up on the chart to, what does it say here, 2.9 million. If you look at GTA itself, it's practically 3 million already for the sellers, 2.9 million for the buyers. And then if you look at the player owned trade hubs, it does go down to 2.9 million pretty much, and the buyers, that doesn't change that much, 2,870,000 ISK, very close to the GTAP prices themselves. And these are also 4 jumps out, strangely enough. Here we get 1 jump out, yeah, 2.9 million. So GTA is showing the way. I think that we are back on the inflationary path for plex, and I think that the downwards pressure here is going to stop, especially when Into the Abyss comes out. I can see a lot of people, for instance, find or buy the skills for a Triglavian ship and the weapon system, and then just, you know, going for some easy skill extractors, skill injectors, things like that, that they might just fund with plex, increase demand there. I think it's very likely. Next up, we'll take a look at the multiple pilot training certificate. That is, in my opinion, also showing the way for a plex, and that is up, of course, after reaching a bottom of 880 million ISK. We are back up well above a billion at this point, selling for 1.2 billion ISK. Buyers coming in at 1,150,000 ISK, 50 million ISK, something like that. But I think the chart is pretty clear here. The temporary lower prices are over. It will still take some time for the volumes here to be absorbed, because both of these volume spikes are due to CCP sales, but the market will do that. It will normalize, and at some point I fully expect us to get back close to the 1.4 billion mark. So personally, I would say if you've managed to buy some of these below a billion ISK, you've done really well, and I would have the patience to wait for 1.3, 1.4 billion ISK before I actually unload them and take a maximum of profit on that investment. Although you can clearly see, bought for less than a billion, selling for 1.2 billion won't really be a problem to manage. That's a nice profit as well. So that was definitely a nice little trade to do here. Next up, we have the skill extractors. Of course, those follow plex very closely. Basically, the 330 million mark is the bounce off point where we are back up as well. And at the tail end here, that is 327 million for the sellers, 325 million for the buyers, and in JITA station we are back up to 333 million. So this is, I think, a clear pattern that we're seeing, is that JITA is pulling the price up first. If people don't know about or just, you know, are a bit lazy and just grab some of these straight from JITA, they are going to increase the average price on the chart, and as a result here we can see that there is this margin opening up between the sell price in JITA and the sell price in the player owned stations. I think it's basically just a matter of time until all of these get absorbed and we start to see a general increase in price in all these plex related items. Next up, we have the large skill injectors going down in price slightly. That's quite a bit of a surprise. The gap opening up between 800 million and the average price for a skill injector, now selling for 799 million ISK, but buyers at 779 million ISK. 20 million gap opening up here. In JITA itself, it's still at 810 million ISK though. So I think that this slight decrease here is going to be a very temporary thing, because plex are going back up, which should already put some pressure on the price here. And when Into the Abyss comes out, there will be new skills, so I think that there will be demand for these skill injectors as well. Should be quite interesting. We will see if it turns out I'm right in the upcoming weeks after the expansion actually hits a little bit of a lull here, and I am really surprised by the gap opening up here and the average price. So that does mean that, you know, buyers here have a nice opportunity to pick them up for like 780, 785, something like that, and that they actually managed to do so, as they seem to be winning out more and more, and people don't just go straight for these sell orders. Interesting situation. Let's see what the small skill injector is doing. Same thing, but here we can already see that those times won't last, at least likely, or not likely to last, because the median daily price here at the tail end is back up significantly. 160 million for the sellers, 156 million for the buyers. Yeah, for the small scale injectors, I think the chart is showing that we were going down slowly and steadily, but it is going to stop at this point. And then we have the daily alpha injectors that are continuing to move around the place quite a lot. We do still need the chart to mature to a full 1 year chart for this item. So it's always difficult to say what's happening here, but it's 56 million for the sellers, 51 million for the buyers. Yeah, a little bit of a margin. It's not 10%, but it's slowly getting there. I find that to be basically the interesting part of all of this, that especially on the items that have known a bit of a clear bottom on the chart. What we're seeing here is that the way the margins seem to work is that they were very close here, very close to one another here, and then once the bottom is reached and we start to pull back from that, you first have JITA increase in price drastically, then the player-owned trade hubs follow suit, and then yeah, there is some hesitation. The buyers, let's take a quick look at those for plex. 2,868,000 And then if you go for Cheetah sellers, it's 3 million. That is a bit of a margin that opens up, that potentially gives you some options for trades, if of course you can manage the intermediary maybe of the player-owned trade hubs. Very interesting situation, and that is definitely different from before. Those player-owned trade hubs took a large part of the Plex related trades for themselves. Quite interesting. Next up, we are going to move to our minerals. That's going to be at 1010. Like that. Let's take a look at it. I think we can already see from the ticker as well that titanium is managing to hold on. I would say that that is a good news in my opinion. Staying above 5 ISK without too much trouble. Let's, oh yeah, we take this filter back so that we see the Cheetah sell orders. Because of the volumes, basically, Cheetah is still the go-to trade hub for actual goods, physical goods that need to be moved. So here is titanium, 527 for the sellers, 503 for the first buyer. It's also in Cheetah itself. So pretty strong demand, but the volumes are coming in as well here. 1.8 billion, 2 billion, 1.6 billion. That's quite a bit of titanium coming in, which is keeping the price from going even higher. So 5.5 and up is not in the cards at the moment. There's just too much supply, but there is still decently strong demand as well, keeping the price from falling off to 1 year lows, which is different I think for pyrite. Well, not exactly. We went to less than 4 ISK. We did a little bit of a bounce back up here, and we're basically staying in the middle between those. Interesting. Finally a bottom forming for pyrite. It is possible, of course. 429 for the sellers, 411 for the buyers. The sell order volumes though still quite large, 770 million, another 500 million here, another 500 million and another 800 million here. That's still quite a lot of pyrite, probably too much for the market to absorb, so we won't see 4.5 or 5 ISK anytime soon, I don't think, but at least it's stable. It's not going to yet another 1 year low, blowing straight through the 4 ISK barrier or anything like that. So let's call that good news. Next up, we've got Mixelon. Continuing its descent, but also seemingly slowing down. 1 day of an average for less than 70 ISK, but we're trying to stay above that. Yep, 74.6 for the sellers, 70.6 for the buyers. 4 ISK margin, that's not too much. The market is basically agreeing on this price and is forming that bottom at around 70 to 74 ISK. Okay. I'd say that that's still alright. We're still on the average, just like with titanium, and those are definitely your focuses if you're mining in HiSec. Grab the Mixelon sources and then grab the titanium sources. For Isogen, it is bad news. That is, in my opinion, very bad news. Seeing the 5-day moving average cross the 30 ISK mark on the downside is really not good. Median daily price at the moment, 27 ISK for Isogen. Sellers are now coming in at 28.8 ISK, buyers at 26.8 ISK. So that is another 1 year low point for Isogen. It's really been the hardest mineral to get rid of because there's just too much of it in the current way that we are mining. So another 1 year low. There's really not much to say. It's been going down, straight down for like 8 months, and I think before this on the chart here we should have something like the Orcan or Orcal changes, which was another just massive downturn for minerals. Yeah, CCP has made minerals very, very cheap, and does Tech 1 chips as well. Let's take a look at what Noxium is doing. Trying to hold on, trying to stay away from that 300 ISK mark, but slowly the price is eroding here again. 315 for the sellers, 294 for the buyers. They want to get that price below 300 ISK, and you're seeing that pattern here again repeated for Isogen. I would say 30 ISK, we're playing with that, we're playing with that, we're playing with that. Now we're going through that, and yeah, the sellers are just forced straight down. Several ISK again, 29 for the sellers, 27 for the buyers, and that is just going to keep going down because the supplies keep coming in as well. So who knows, 25 might come in, might become the new defense position price that the market is gonna say, you know what, I might invest at this price range. Yeah, if we break some of these psychological barriers, then look out below, we can go quite quickly. And for Noxium it's 300, so we've played with that several times before, and the buyers are already at 294. The more we see coming in here with another 27 million, another 20, another 12 million here, the more we see coming in here, the more at risk we are that once again we'll break 300. And if one big seller really starts to go below that price of 300 ISK, then we could go a lot lower again. Very crazy situation that some of these are still going for 1 year low points here. Let's take a look at Zytrine next. That one is of course meandering at the current price range as well, which is also, you could say, a 1 year low point. 674 for the sellers, 621 for the buyers. That is of course due to all the extra supply from the refineries and the moon mining activities in 0.5 systems mostly, I would say. It has also brought a bit of stability. You can clearly see now that we have volumes coming in from multiple players, all at the same price ranges in the few million mark ranges, and so it's not really the Gnostic entities that control the Zytrine market anymore, and that means that the gap has closed between sellers and buyers, and you get lots of sellers that are actively trying to get rid of the Zytrine, but you also have buyers that can now actually grab some of these minerals at their buy prices, which was very unlikely before you could get Zytrine and Megasite from HiSec. Then you were completely dependent on nullsec exporting those minerals to HiSec, and those people would almost always have the patience to just put up a sell order and wait for it all to clear. And that is a big difference in this market because of the moon mining changes. It's crashed the price down of Zytrine, but it's also made the price range between sellers and buyers a bit more narrow, and of course it gives better opportunities to actually buy cheap Zytrine from impatient sellers. Same thing with Megasite, actually heading for a 1 year low point at the moment, heading for 656 for the sellers, 626 for the buyers. Very cheap as well, but you can see the supply every day. People are bringing in their couple million of Megasite and Zytrine that they've mined from their moon operations, and so you see lots and lots and lots of sell orders, which means that the gap here again has closed a little bit. It's only 30 ISK, which is like maybe 5% or something like that, between sellers and buyers, but the buyers will probably also grab some of that cheap Megasite, which was something that was very difficult to do before, or you had a much larger gap. No, actually not a larger gap, probably a more narrow gap, because you needed to follow. Yeah, I think that's a mistake in my analysis. I'm not exactly sure. I might have to go take a look at some of the old EVE talks, but I think that the gap was basically more narrow because the sellers were completely dictating the price. They had to bring in these supplies from nullsec. The buyers had no choice. If you want to pick some of these up, then you gotta put a buyer very close to the sell price. Otherwise, these exporters from nullsec will just have the patience to put up a sell order. And so I think it's actually opened up the gap a little bit between sellers and buyers. I'd need to check that, but that's my theory. And finally, we also have more fight for Tech 2 production, holding quite well, trying to stay above 9,000 ISK, and sellers are at 9,400, buyers 9,150. Definitely in a nice average position as well. I'd say too early to invest in this, and I would love to actually try to sell at above 10k, so have some patience for more fight. We'll see how that evolves. Next up, we have our PI segment at 1820. Like that. Let's take a look and see if there's anything happening here. Quite interesting for broadcast nodes, actually, dipping to a price below average and then bouncing back up a little bit, but we are settling at around 2.25 million, a bit above average probably. Yeah, 2.3 million for the sellers and 2 million for the buyers. Bit of a gap actually here. Quite interesting to see that. So basically what happened here, price went up. I think here a lot of it, this increase was on some speculation that perhaps for Into the Abyss or for the next expansion we would see a new structure. That didn't materialize, so it turns out that we had some oversupply. We dipped below average, and now we're back at around average, maybe even slightly above average for the sellers, but the buyers are not moving, and so this has basically opened up a bit of a gap between sellers and buyers. Look out for any fresh supply. If that happens, you can drive the price back to 2.2, 2.1 million ISK. Then maybe some of these buyers get absorbed as well, and you might have some cheap broadcast nodes in the near future. Construction blocks next, having to give back most of the grounds from that very nice backup to 15k. Went back to 12,000 on average here. Latest 2 days though, back above to 13,000. Yep, went back up. 13,200 for the sellers, 12,400 for the buyers. We're back above average, but not by that much anymore. Consumer electronics next, just basically around average, a little bit too short on action for me. Currently selling for 15,000 discs, buyers at 13,800 discs. Definitely a nice product to produce for a refined PI material. This is pretty nice, but there's not too much action here outside a single dip last year, and of course the place we started at. So we've got the coolants managing to go above 9,000 ISK here on a couple of days. That is really nice in my opinion. 9,100 for the sellers, 8,900 for the buyers. I think this increase that we're seeing here over the last couple of months is showcasing the introduction of refineries, 2.5 systems to wormhole space has spurred more, even more structured production and even more consumption of fuel. So I think here we are seeing the fuel consumption across New Eden pick back up after it really dropped off when all of the bosses that were actively moon mining were basically decommissioned with the change here when the refineries came to 0-0. So very interesting to see here, massive dip as basically 0-0 I think went as lean as they needed to be. But now us high-sec guys are probably making up for that lack of demand. Enriched uranium holding very steadily right here at the current price range around 11,250 ISK. So it's 11,200 for the first few sellers, then we're very quickly going to 11,700 and it's 11,000 for the buyers. So very steady enriched uranium price. The integrity response drones, heading back to 2.5 million back on the average. We're a bit above that again, 2.7 for the sellers, 2.5 for the buyers. Nothing too dramatic though, this is an okay price. And here are the mechanical parts, again fuel related, heading back for 10,000 ISK for the first time in quite a while, 10,200 for the sellers. That's actually an average price for mechanical parts. It's so easy to make, barren planets are so common that this is a pretty nice comeback for mechanical parts. 9,300 for the buyers, so a bit of a margin opening up here, but again showcasing that some demand is coming back for fuels, with mechanical parts reaching 10,000 ISK for the first time in quite a few months, and then for coolants we've got 9,000 ISK in quite a few months as well. Interesting situation. Nuclear reactors next, dipping well below 100,000 ISK. I like it if there are not too many buyers. 94,000 for the sellers, 86,000 for the buyers. Definitely a buy opportunity in my book. You can see that we are on the low end of the chart here, and you can see the potential 130, even 150 is sometimes possible for nuclear reactors. Looks like we are oversupplied by quite a bit at the moment, and there is not that much demand. I would say something close to 90,000 ISK should definitely be possible if you want to make your investment in nuclear reactors. This would be the time to do so. We've got robotics next. Again, fuel related, holding well above 100,000 ISK here all of a sudden, so doing nicely. 100,500 ISK and 94,000 for the buyers. Again, showing that while demand for fuel did drop off quite significantly on the changes to moon mining, where bosses just, get rid of all of those if that's what you're using for moon mining. But now with the introduction of the refineries to high-sec, to 0.5 systems I should say, we are seeing demand for fuel pick back up. Next up we have the self-harmonizing power cores, just back on its average. There's not much to say here. 2.2 million for the sellers, 2 million for the buyers. That's an okay average. For these advanced PI materials, honestly, what I'm going to do is just look for an actual buy opportunity. Look for the chart to dip below the average, then try to grab a couple of cheap ones, because we know that in the future there will be more structures coming to EVE Online. It will make a lot of sense as an investment, but we can also tell that we are in a calmer period now, with nothing on the horizon, nothing concrete announced on that front. Superconductors next, also back below 12,000 ISK, so 12,400 for the sellers, but 11,900 for the buyers. around average, maybe a touch below that, but not by too much. And then we've got the test culture still doing quite well, 10,400 for the sellers and 9,200 for the buyers. Is a respectable price, definitely not the price range where I would look to make an investment. Yeah, this just makes sense to produce test cultures at the moment. And finally, we have the wetware mainframes that went down to 2.25 million, is back up towards 2.5 million, but we're basically at around the average price again, 2.4 for the sellers and 2.3 million for the buyers. Not much to say here, except for a slight comeback in the fuel-related PI materials that is materializing, you could say. The rest seems to be pretty quiet, and I personally do like where nuclear reactors are at for a buy opportunity. Next up, we'll take a look at the Tech One chips, 2520. Like that. I just don't really think that there's gonna be a lot of action here as expected. The apocalypse went up to 250 million last week. There was basically no supply and some demand apparently. If this is a volume increase, then ouch, not a good sign, but that does mean that these types of increases get squashed very quickly, and we're back at 140 million. Yeah, 142 for the sellers, 130 for the buyers, and you can basically see that in the last week they came in with just a couple of apocalypses, right? 149, 148, 147, 142, 141. There we go. The margin has been closed with maybe 30 ships or something like that. Very easy to do, very quickly. So these increases, a bit unfortunate if you're looking to speculate. Very nice, of course, if you want cheap Tech One ships to use and lose. But these will get squashed very quickly. The Caracal is working on a 1-year low point, 8.8 million for the sellers, 7.5 million for the buyers. I would not be surprised if all of a sudden there would be a massive purchase of everything like below 9 million. That's quite a few Caracals. They're very popular, make for some nice fleets if you want to use Caracals there. And so that is probably the pattern that we can expect with the Caracal going this low. Does that mean that it's worth to make an investment in it? I really personally don't think so. It's gonna be very hard to actually unload any Caracals at those higher prices, and supply will just come swooping back in very quickly. So 1-year low point, look out for an alliance to purchase a lot of these all of a sudden, but yeah, I don't think you can trade in this. Produce, that maybe, just slowly produce and then try to put them up on the market at the right time. That would make sense, so that it's only a couple of Caracals or something like that, but you know, an investment that's large enough to make it worth it, I don't see it. Catalyst next, trying to get back a little bit towards 1.25 million, but we're still in the 1 million to 125 million, so there's not much to say there. 1.2 for the sellers and less than a million for the buyers. Very cheap, showing the lack of demand again. The Drake dipping below 45 million and staying there now, 44 for the sellers, 35 million for the buyers. That's very cheap as well. Then we have the Ferox, 45 million and dipping below that. So again, below, there's not much to say here. That's 43 million for the sellers, 39 for the buyers. We are below average for Tech One ships. The minerals are just too cheap and demand is just too low. Same here with the Megatron, same pattern, heading for 140. So 145 for the sellers, 133 for the buyers. It makes for a big margin. The volumes are just too small to actually make any trades in this. Oracle next, heading for a 1-year low towards 65 million ISK, in fact 68 for the sellers and 61 for the buyers. Again, very cheap. The Raven also dipping below 150 for which it hasn't done in quite a while, but now that that is broken, right, first sellers coming in, they have to go to less than 150, I think, to really unleash, be able to sell them. 141 for the buyers. I think we'll keep going lower here for the Raven as well. Retriever, 1-year low point, selling now for less than 19 million ISK, buyers at 18. Quite crazy. The Tempest on a volume spike, so after dipping to 140 million is working its way back up on a volume spike, so that we should be out of these. Yep, 170 for the sellers, but again, this is, I think, something that could happen with the Caracal as well at any time. But what now? You can't really put up 50 Tempests now and try to sell them for 170 to make some ISK. Nobody's gonna buy that, and fresh supply is just going to come trickling in. So I basically think that, and you know, trickling in. You know, it's going to be 1, 2, 1, 2, sure, but that's going to be enough because the market is so small at the moment. And so I think that here we'll have a little bit of a jump up, but just like with the Apocalypse, we'll move back down on, let's say, half a dozen or a dozen new Tempests, which really are basically on their way at the moment. Next up here, we've got the Thrasher staying below average as well. Sellers, 950,000 discs, so a destroyer for less than $1 million, very cheap. The Tornado heading for 60 million ISK here, 62 for the sellers, 54 million for the buyers of Tornadoes. Pretty cheap. The Tristan tried to get back to 500,000 ISK. It's not succeeding. Sellers have to go below that. The Venture is really the strange story here, still staying above average for the whole year, selling for 250, buyers at 222. And then the Vexor dipping off as well, definitely below average for the entire chart, selling for 9 million, buyers at 8.7 million. Definitely also, if you're more of an alpha clone, if you don't know too much, the Vexor is potentially a nice entry ship for Into the Abyss. Tier 1s have some guns in the high slots as well. Try to be cap stable. It's not going to be easy on the Vexor, but get as close to that as possible. And with the drones, right, you can have 5 small drones, you can also have 5 medium drones. You have the DPS to tackle both the waves of tiny enemies and the waves of a big enemy that needs more DPS. So I would say that that is still a very good option. And Vexor Navy Issue going up to Ishtar, I think, are options as well. I just never tried them out on CC because I went other routes, but I think it's definitely a possibility. Let's move on to the Tech 2 market next at 31.15. Like that. And let's take a look at what's happening here, but unfortunately I don't think we'll spot any buy opportunities if we look at what's happening with the Aries here. Just basically another leg up and staying well above 30 million. 33.4 for the sellers, 30 million for the buyers. It's not really any action seen here that would seem like we could make any trades. The Cerberus dipping back to 280 million ISK. It's still quite expensive, of course, but I would say that considering that we just dipped from 330 million ISK, I think this could have been related to the year event, the 15 years of EVE Online event, right? Cerberus, really awesome ship for that. So as this went back down, maybe if you plan on trying a Cerberus for Into the Abyss, try to grab it now, because I do think that Tech 2 cruisers in general will be in very strong demand when you know, the players that don't know anything about the expansion just yet, which is gonna be the majority, find out what it's all about. We could see some very strong demand there, and so these dips, I think if you still need a Cerberus, grab it on the current dip, because that's your last chance, I think, to do so. Here we've got the Claw, went up quite significantly as well, and is now staying well above 30 million, so that's a no. That's the same as the Aries, 34 million for the sellers, 31 million for the buyers. That's, you know, a big no for me if you're looking to trade. The Crow heading for a 1-year high, 40 million for the sellers, 31.8 for the buyers. It's basically a nice sell opportunity if you can produce crows, or if you grab the couple, you happen to grab a couple here for less than 30 million ISK, then you can definitely try to sell them. The Crusader also working its way back up above 30 million ISK, so it, you know, was stable. It's just basically not as popular as the others, but now it's 32 million for the sellers, 28 million for the buyers. And do you want to make trades on a chart like this? No, you want a chart like this here, September, October. That's what you want to see. We're just not seeing it. The Heretic next, slowly heading back up above 80 million, so yeah, just very expensive. Here is the Hound. That is a bit more interesting, right? With a high price range of 45 million ISK at the very top, and now going down to less than 28 million, really? 29 million for the sellers, 25, just below that for the buyers. Okay, that is interesting to me. If you can try to grab a couple at 25 million, if you look at this entire chart here, that is not bad. Yes, for me, Hound, if you want to make a Tech 2 investment, look into the Hound, try to grab a couple 25 to 26 million. I think you should be able to do so, as long as you don't go too crazy in the volumes. And considering what's happening here, I think that that's potentially an actual buy opportunity. Okay, very interesting. So the Hound maybe, and then the, what was it, the Crow here, definitely in sell order territory. The Ishtar next, staying very expensive, also going back down just a little bit. So 290 for the first seller, 300 million, basically 270 for the buyers. Very expensive. Again, we are coming down from a YD low point. If you need an Ishtar, if you absolutely still need one, consider doing it now, I think. Manticore, after reaching 45 million, going back down towards 35 million, but yeah, 37 for the sellers, 35 for the buyers. I wouldn't call that a buy opportunity just yet. Nemesis, exact opposite from the Hound, actually. Currently, we're out, nope, 37 for the sellers, 31 for the buyers. So you could have grabbed, well, again, we would need that 25 million, which we do have for the Hound here. Not on the chart, but on the buyers. To call a buy opportunity, but you get a sell opportunity for the Nemesis. So it looks like the stealth bombers might still be alive enough to make some trades. Pontifex heading back for 75 million ISK, but I think the market is basically too small and still too expensive. Purifier, after reaching 40 to 45 million as well, going back down, but buyers are still at 33 million, sellers 35, so that's too early. Then we've got the Raptor next, another leg up to 40 million ISK for the sellers, 39 actually. But yeah, too expensive. The Saber, pretty stable, 70 to 80 million ISK, but not something I would risk a trade on. The Stiletto, that is nice, right? Less than 30 million ISK, go up above 40, go back to 30, go back to 40, heading back down at the moment. Buyers 30.7 million, a bit too early in my book, but definitely an interesting chart here as well. Then we've got the Stork. Staying at 100 million ISK, so that's a big nope for me. And then we've got the Taranis after another spike to like 40 million ISK is back at 30. Buyers are at 26.9 million, 31 million for the buyers. Unfortunately, the Taranis is really niche, it looks like, because it's not doing this on a consistent basis. It just has like a couple of spikes and generally is actually on the cheap side of things. So I would say Hound looks very interesting if you absolutely want to buy a few investments in Tech 2 this week, and the Nemesis is a very nice place to try to sell, and same with the Crow. Both of those are very expensive at the moment, so let's hope that that the Hound does show that pattern, that we'll see a Hound spike back 35 million, something like that. You know, buy for 25, sell for 35 sounds like a pretty good trade to me. That's what I'd be looking out for at the moment, and it's not showing up on the chart, but buyers below 25 million to me would be a nice place to try and grab a couple. So it's still a very mixed picture in the Tech 2 market, I would say, and I'm still not confident that about the any ships larger than frigates. Those are just so expensive, look so expensive to me that I would not risk any investments in those. But of course, if you're planning to use them, for instance in the Abyss, then look out for some nice buy opportunities there. Next up, Tech 3. Let's take a look at that at 37.55. And as always, we'll start with Destroyer. So here's the Confessor slowly heading back towards 40 million ISK. 40 million, well, 39 for the sellers, 35.6 for the buyers. You know, it's a slow increase in price. So that does mean that right here at 34 million, I think it was like 32 million for the buyers. You could have really grabbed a couple of cheap Confessors. On any big nullsec action, you will probably see a nice spike. So could you still try an investment? Sure, you're a little bit too late to the party, but I don't think it's a big mistake. Just again, don't go too crazy with the volumes. Hecate actually breaking out a little bit. There we go. So here we had a nice little buy opportunity. Right now selling for 44 million ISK. Buyers had to go up to 40 million ISK. That's quite interesting. It's not even on that much volume, but nice little spike up here. The Jackdaw next, staying below. Well, look at that. Let's take a look at this. Right here, we've got the low points of 35 million ISK. Went up to 40, spiked up to 50, and is on its way back down a little bit from that. 44 for the sellers, 38 for the buyers. So they're still definitely available. They are affordable, not too expensive, but you don't see the hundreds here anymore, and as a result we are stabilizing in the price above our bottom prices. So still doable, just not the best time to invest in them anymore. And then finally we've got this Vapel that is still seeing the hundreds here. So if we still have 400, 120, 35 million for the sellers, 31.6 million for the buyers. If you're still looking for that tactical destroyer investment, I would say go for the Vapel and wait for Nullstick to blow up, maybe early June with the changes to the outpost. That might be the time to try to cash in on an investment in these types of ships. But yeah, the others are showing that the investment opportunity doesn't last forever because it's gone there. Moving on to the cruisers, here is the Legion slowly working its way down to 180 million ISK, 183 for the sellers. Basically trickling in here as well, nothing too crazy on the volumes, and 170 for the buyers. Next up here we've got the Loki settling at, let's see here, 240 for the sellers, 226 for the buyers. Again, nothing too crazy for on the volumes, despite the fact that this is very expensive. Then we've got the Proteus working. Ooh, that's interesting. 209 million for the sellers, 191 for the buyers. Look at that, 1 year high point. But look at the volumes here. There's nothing here, 40, 50 Protei. This is manipulation in my book. I think that there is someone that is just upping the Tech 3 cruisers in general. And well, where do you still have some work to do? Proteus and probably the Tengu. The volumes are low enough that, you know, someone with even an average wallet could buy them all, relist them all for a higher price. That's basically, I think, what's happening here. And it's the same story with the Tengu, which is basically gone. You know, someone must have bought everything there, so they're now selling for 390 million ISK, 195 for the buyers. So that's a massive margin. You can try to sell some on this downturn, but it's not going to be easy. Why? Here are the volumes. It's like 100 Tengus a day. It's just very hard to really make ISK as a small time player when there's a big fish out there that's grabbing everything and doing so quite consistently. So at the moment you must have a couple of Tengus as an investment, which I've never really thought there was a good time to buy until we're now seeing this manipulation. So but if you have a couple of, if you can produce a couple, of course try to grab some profits here, but know that in my opinion this is market manipulation. Someone is upping these prices artificially. And then we have the extra product that's going to be at 42.20. And we're going to take a look at the faction cruisers again. It's been a little while, and I do think that these will also be very popular for Into the Abyss. So maybe trying to find a couple that could still be affordable might be interesting. So we've got cruisers, faction cruisers. Let's maybe start with the Navy faction cruisers. Here is the Augurer Navy issue. Basically at 50 million is definitely at the lower end, but sellers are coming in at 66 million ISK. And what are the trades here? Energy turret damage, and does it have so only 3 high slots? It does have, well, 15, so that's a no. I don't think that's going to be too great. Caracal Navy issue doesn't have drones if I'm not mistaken. Let's take a look at the price here first. Well, pretty cheap at the moment, 58 million for the sellers, 50 million for the buyers, definitely on the cheap side of things. So must be a good time to be Kaldari with lots of LP there at the moment. But yeah, not really my choice for Into the Abyss either. Maybe tier 1, maybe tier 2, but the lack of drones is bothering me. Executor Navy issue, a bit more expensive at the moment, 88 million for the sellers, 70 million for the buyers. What is the capacity here? 5 small drones, that gives you some options, and hybrid turrets. Let's take a quick look at the fitting here. 5 high slots with 5 turrets, 4 medium slots, 4 low slots. Yeah, actually the Executor Navy issue, in my opinion, you can make that into a nice sturdy brick that's gonna survive tier 2 quite reliably. And then of course you still have some room for E-War as well. Hybrid turrets can have decent tracking. You've got the 5 small drones. Why not? That looks like an interesting option. It is a bit more expensive, unfortunately. Oman Navy issue on the cheap side, 57 million for the sellers, 50 million for the buyers. Let's take a quick look at the trades here. Especially if it has drones. 50 capacity, not bad. Medium drones, you do have to make a choice though, so that is maybe something that's not so good. You can take 5 medium drones, but you can't take a flight of small drones there. And then it's medium energy turrets, and then the slot layout, 3 medium slots. I'd say Executor Navy issue is looking better than this Oman Navy issue. If you absolutely want to take an Amar ship in there, maybe you can take a look at it, but I think it's going to be worse actually. Osprey Navy issue next on the chart. Actually really cheap again, 60 million for the sellers, 54 million for the buyers. The situation here, let's take a look. 25 for drones, 25, so we're talking small drones, but at least you have a flight of them. It's missiles, I actually sort of like that. That looks pretty good. And then on the fitting sides, you've got 5 high slots. Good God, 2 utility slots. So that's maybe the one weak point, but can you combine that? Missiles. Okay, kind of a weird one. I love the 6 mid slots, should give you a pretty good tank there. And then the 4 low slots, you can up your DPS from both your launchers and your drones maybe. Yeah, could be okay, Still think the Executor Navy issue would be my choice though. Side fleet issue, 1 year high point, selling for 80 million ISK. What are the trades here? That could be interesting. I don't really know this ship. Again, a flight of small drones, projectile turret, rate of fire, light missile. That's a strange one. What's the fitting looking like? So you could you could try the craziest combination here, I think, with the side fleet issue. Try to combine both guns and some missiles. You've got 5 high slots, yeah. Try to combine some guns with some missiles and drones to really have a nice mix. You still have 5 mid slots, so you could probably, yeah, you could actually really get some nice E-war in there. Tank-wise, it's not gonna be too easy. Maybe you want some nice speed. Could be interesting. Then we've got the Stabber fleet issue next, probably also pretty expensive. Yeah, so Minmatar is not doing too hot in faction warfare at the moment. Their LP is very expensive basically. And 77 million for a Stabber fleet issue. What are the trades here? Especially the drones, 40-40. You take small drones, maybe a couple of medium drones in there to try and up your DPS a little bit. It gives you some options. Projectile turrets, the fitting is very important. Then 4 mid slots, 6 low slots, not bad. Stabber fleet issue is definitely an option, just like in my opinion the Executor Navy issue, because you've got the drones, you've got the DPS, and you've got the E-war to handle all of that. Looks pretty interesting. Unfortunately also one of the more expensive ones. And then we've got the Vexor Navy issue going for 130 million ISK, 1 year high point as well. Ouch, Galente, faction warfare, what are you guys doing? That is super expensive. And of course this is actually a ship that can be very good for Into the Abyss, I think, as well, because of the 6 low slots, 4 mid slots. You can again go with E-war and a good armor tank. And of course, with this type of drone capacity, you've got the whole range. You can even get 5 large drones. So this is going to easily handle tier 2. Tier 3, I think it's going to be a bit more tricky to do. Fitting wise, you only have 2 guns. You get 4 high slots. You get some utility there as well. Can be interesting, but again, the most interesting Navy cruisers in my opinion are the more expensive ones at the moment. So that's just bad timing for what's happening in faction warfare at the moment. Now let's take a look at the pirate factions ships here. Here's the Ashimu, basically on an average price range, 88 for the sellers, 81 for the buyers, nothing too crazy. I don't know the Ashimu myself, so let's see if it gets 14 drones. Not great, not bad. 3 gun turrets, 5, 4, 6 slow slots. No, I think it's gonna lack in the DPS department a little bit, especially with no bonus to any guns. So that's a no for me. Cinnabal is costing 150 million for the sellers, 142 for the buyers. It's a bit above average, but nothing too crazy. And this is a great ship because it is medium projectile turret bonuses. quite a lot of them. It has, I think, drone options, yeah, although you have to choose, but with 50 megabit you've got some options. And then the fitting 555 is very strong, where you can fit a decent tank, not the best tank, but you also have all of your E-War options. Yeah, the Cinnabal, I do like it, but again, 150 million, a bit more expensive. Orthrus next. Well, on the chart it's around average, but it is gonna cost you 200 million ISK to buy an Orthrus. Does it have drones, I wonder? It has 25. Alright, it has drones, and then of course it has 5 launchers, 6 high slots. You can put up a pretty decent shield tank there, and then for the low slots you can up your DPS both for missiles and drones if you want to. 3 rigs as well. Orthrus, very interesting, definitely an option as well, you know, comparable maybe to the Gila, something like that. It's gonna handle maybe up to tier 3 without too much trouble, but it is more expensive right away as well. Phantasm next, actually going down in price at the moment. 120 for the sellers, 113 for the buyers, around average again. Man, so many averages here, and unfortunately 3 turret slots, that's it, 15, so that's 3 small drones. That's a no. You can maybe grab that in tier 1, tier 2, but it's not gonna be easy. Stratios next. I think that could be interesting, actually at a 1-year low point for the Stratios. That's interesting. 186 million for the sellers, 175 for the buyers. And the Stratios, we all know, is a great ship because it's got incredible drone capacity, 100 megabit. So your potential DPS there is nice, 400. So you've got all the options there for your drones. You can even switch out damage types if you want to. And on top of that, it also has some potential medium energy turret here for some turret damage as well, with 4 slots. Not bad. 555 layout, just like with the Cinnabal. A great option as well, and very cheap. Honestly, if I'd still need to make an investment and gamble on something that to go up in price because of the Abyss, it would be the Stratios. It just makes too much sense. It's an exploration cruiser itself, and it's gonna be really good, I think, consistently up to tier 2, but you also saw that it is struggling in tier 3 because of the lack of tank. Basically, the lack of innate resistance for the Stratios will be a problem. But I think it will be a choice that a lot of people will make eventually if they're exploring the Abyss for the first time. Then we've got the king. Here is the Gila, actually going down in price. Quite interesting. 204 million for the sellers, 191 for the buyers. Definitely affordable, and the Gila, of course, has that crazy bonus to the medium drones. You can have all medium drones with you as well, plus that missile capacity. Great ship, fitting wise also, 6 mid slots. You can put a better tank in this one than on the Stratios, so this will probably end up being a choice for a lot of players. It is more expensive, of course, 200 million ISK, but it is just a great ship. The one disadvantage is the medium drones. If you end up with tracking problems against the smaller targets, you can lose a lot of time on this, but basically it's so powerful, and you have the option of going with something like rapid lights to deal with those, so that you can keep your drones for the bigger targets, for instance. You have plenty of options with the Gila. I think it's going to end up being the choice. After people try with the Stratios and fail with the Stratios, I think they'll move on to the Gila next. So potentially could be okay. It's on an average price at the moment. And then finally we've got the Vigilant that spiked up not too long ago, but is back at a regular price, costing 220 million though, 210 for the buyers. So that is still pretty expensive, and I've heard that some people have been using the Vigilant very well in the Abyss. Is it, yeah, because of the medium hybrid turret bonus and the stasis web fire bonus. That is basically, let's take a look at the fitting here. 5 high slots, all turrets, 4 mid slots, so you can do a double web there, 6 low slots, you can get a very nice tank in there. This is obviously also an option. Again, more expensive, but definitely an option, I think, for Into the Abyss, because of the even better webs there. I think you will 75% to medium hybrid turret damage. Very, very interesting one. Just, I'd say, go bonkers. Add in the 5 medium drones here as well. I think it is on the 50 megabit, and just, you know, try to use your super strong webs for the small targets. It's gonna be some manual flying. because of course you need to grab those small targets and effectively kill them, but the Vigilant will potentially be really good, I think, in the Abyss as well. The real go-to ships will be the Tech 2 cruisers. I think I'm gonna keep that for next week or the week after that, and see what the impact of the actual expansion will have been on those ships, because Tech 2 cruisers are already in a pretty crazy situation because of the moon mining changes. They're already super expensive. But there you go, guys. Those are the faction cruisers and my thoughts about what will happen when Into the Abyss launches in that category of ships. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.